Namaskaram to everyone. Hope you are all doing very well. So, yesterday we read Hindus in Hindu Rashtra by Dr. Anand Ranganathan up to the fourth chapter, that is the RTE Act. Today we'll again continue reading and we'll finish the book. And that is we are remained with four chapters. Okay, so before we start reading, please buy this book. As you can see, this book is available in English, Kannada, Hindi, and you can get it from Padega India or Amazon as you like. And also, why you should buy this book is the reason is that every penny earned from the loyalty of this book is donated to temples and foundations helping the Hindu cause. Okay, let me show you that Anand said donates it. Mm, Yes, here you can see that this book, the every paisa earned from the royalty of this book is being donated to temples and foundations supporting Hindus and their causes. So you should definitely buy this book. Now, oh well, I forgot to share. Okay, now as you can see, yes. So we'll start reading. Let me just share the screen for you all. Yes. So the fifth chapter today, from where we will start, is legislations that appease non-Hindus but target Hindus. In Hinduism, religion is an offshoot of the way of life, while in Islam, way of life is an offshoot of religion. Because of this distinction, one is amenable to change and reform, while in the other, leave alone reform, even changing a punctuation in the holy verses and commandments is expressly forbidden. And herein lies the dichotomy that plagues our state. We will try and reform one religion and its practices, but will recoil from reforming the other. We will break and remove the shackles of intolerance from one, but will jangle and rattle them with pride for the other. We will constitutionalize reform in one through legislation, codems, laws, and IPC sections, but will not only stay away from bringing in similar legislations for the other. We will even overturn the Supreme Court judgments that aim to bring in limited reform. Bigamy, for example, is banned under the Indian law, especially under Section 494 of the IPC, and carries a 7-year jail term. But it is permitted under Section 2 of the Muslim Personal Law, Sharia, Application Act 1937. This is not to suggest that bigamy should be allowed for Hindus, but rather to highlight that uh, rather to highlight the double standards when it comes to Muslims. Another case in point is the Prevention of Communal and Targeted Violence, Access to Justice and Reparations Bill 2011, or the so-called Communal Violence Bill that was drafted by the Sonia Gandhi constituted and monitored NSC. Fortunately, it never saw the light of day. If it had, it would have been yet another instrument of discrimination against the majority in the Hindu community. That is because the revised draft changed the definition of the group targeted in communal violence. Henceforth, this group would have meant either a religious or linguistic minority or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. This essentially meant that only minorities and SC/STs could be victims, while the perpetrators of communal violence would always be the majority, meaning Hindus. The absurdity of this bill dawned when people realized that Hindus would be branded as perpetrators even when they were the minority, for example, in Kashmir, Punjab, or Kerala. When SCSTs were subtracted from the Hindu population, outrageously, this definition was to be used even in cases of sexual assault. When Hars Mandar, one of the NSA members who drafted this ludicrous bill, was asked to explain reasons for such blatant anti Hindu sentiments, he reported by saying, There is an institutional bias against the minorities that needed to be corrected. In case of the communal violence, the entire criminal justice system has been against minorities. It is to correct this institutional bias that we needed this bill. Someone should inform Mr. Mandir that if at all the entire criminal justice system has been against a community in recent memory, it is against the Kashmiri Hindus who 30 years later are still seeking justice for the rape, murder, ethnic cleansing, and genocide perpetrated against their community by Muslims, the so-called minority. But according to this bill, these crimes could not have happened because the minority could not have committed them. Perhaps that is why the Supreme Court also refuses to open these cases of atrocities. The truth is that the state has been blackmailed and browbeaten to such an extent that the so-called liberals, progressives, and progressives and conscientious feminists outrage on Karwa Chauth but slither away under their favorite Partha Sarathi Rao when it comes to giving equal inheritance rights to Muslim women. These feminists will talk of anything, but the fact that even courts in our country have begun to ratify the allowance for Muslims to marry on attainment of puberty, violating the violating the most sacrosanct of all laws, namely the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. And the High Court judge who okayed the marriage of a Jewish Muslim girl is now in the Supreme Court. He was one of the judges who blamed Nupur Sharma for the beheading of the tailor Kanhaiya Lal. They will claim banning triple talaq is an invasion of privacy and an assault on one's freedom of expression. They will not castigate Owaisi or his party for vehemently opposing the removal of leprosy as a ground for divorce. Because the AIMPLB believes that leprosy, a disease completely curable, is sufficient grounds for divorce. They will not side with Savano. They will abuse anyone who pleads for one India, one law. They will even applaud Mehbooba Mufti, who recently called for introducing stoning as a punishment in Kashmir. This is the kind of in your face, state sanctioned hypocrisy we are dealing with. Hindus and Hinduism stand no chance. When did they ever? For centuries, those who have ruled India have sought to bring in reforms only in Hinduism. The British even set up the BN Rand Committee in 1941 to exclusively codify only Hindu laws. The report of this committee formed the template for the 1951 Hindu Code Bills. The bill was adopted in 1956 and it gives creditably so much needed rights to Hindu women, while in the same time providing equality to the affected parties on a range of civil matters from succession to marriage to property rights to guardianship, adoption, and maintenance. Any reform is good. It signifies that helpful mutations are being accumulated, that the living, breathing organism is adapting to changing times, that it is evolving, and because it is evolving, it will survive. But why should only Hindus and Hinduism be reformed? What about Christians and Christianity, Muslims and Islam? Everyone is aware of Dr. Ambedkar's criticism of Hinduism as a religion and as a way of life. The left loses no opportunity to highlight this in books, in debates, and documentaries, even in parliament, but they remain silent when it comes to highlighting his criticism of Islam. Indeed, Dr. Ambedkar was so appalled by selective criticism of Hinduism that he wrote, the social evils that characterize the the social evils that characterize the Hindu society have been well known. But books that expose these evils and call their author at the far of the world to answer for their sins create the unfortunate impression throughout the world that while the Hindus are groveling in the mud of these social evils, groveling in the mud of these social evils and are conservative. The Muslims in India are free from them, and as compared to the Hindus, are a progressive people. That such an impression should prevail is surprising to those who know the Muslim society in India at close quarters. Take the caste system. Islam speaks of brotherhood. Everybody infers that Islam must be free from caste. But this is not the case. Caste among Muslims has remained. There can thus be no manner of doubt that the Muslim society in India is afflicted by the same social evils as afflict the Hindu society. Indeed, the Muslims have all the social evils of the Hindus and something more. that something more is the compulsory system of purdah for Muslim women. In 1975, a 62-year-old mother of five, Shah Bano Begum, was thrown out of her house and onto the streets of Indore. She had been married for 43 years to Muhammad Ahmed Khan, who earned 5,000 rupees a month, a princely sum in those days. 3 years later, destitute and without a roof over her head, Sawan approached the lower courts asking for a maintenance sum of 500 rupees a month under Section 125 125 1A of the Code of Criminal Procedure. What she got instead was a talaq. In his defense, her husband told the court she had already provided 3,000 as meher or dowry during Ida, a period of waiting that a divorced woman must adhere to before she can remarry. The court sided with the wife and asked the husband to pay a reduced maintenance sum of rupees 25 per month. The husband refused, citing the rights given to him under the Muslim personal law. The case went to the High Court. This time, the husband was directed to pay a maintenance sum of rupees 179.20 paisa per month under Section 125. The husband appealed to the Supreme Court. In a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court dismissed Muhammad Ahmed Khan's appeal and directed him to pay maintenance to his ex-wife as laid down by the High Court. Does the Muslim personal law, asked the court, impose no obligation upon the husband to provide for the maintenance of his divorced wife? Undoubtedly, the Muslim husband enjoys the privilege of being able to discard his wife whenever he chooses to do so, for reasons good, bad, or indifferent. Indeed, for no reason at all. It is a matter of deep regret that some of the interveners who supported the husband took up an extreme position by displaying an unwarranted zeal to defeat the right to maintenance of women who are unable to maintain themselves. It is not clear who among the bench penned the concluding words of the judgment. What is clear is that whoever they were are worthy of praise. It is also a matter of regret that Article 44 of the Constitution has remained a dead letter. The state shall endeavor to secure for their citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. A belief seems to have gained ground that it is for the Muslim community to take a lead in the matter of reforms of their personal law. The Common Civil Code will help the cause of national integration by removing disparate loyalties to laws which have conflicting ideology. No community is likely to build the cat by making no community is likely to build the cat by making gra- by making gratuitous concessions on this issue. It is the state which is charged with the duty of securing a uniform civil code for the citizens of the country, and unquestionably, it has the legislative competence to do so. The council in the case whispered, somewhat audibly, that legislative competence is one thing, the political courage to use that competence is quite another. We understand the difficulties involved in bringing persons of different faiths and persuasions on a common platform, but a beginning has to be made. If the Constitution is to have any meaning, inevitably, the role of the reformer has to be assumed by the courts because it is beyond the endurance of sensitive minds to allow injustice to be suffered when it is so palpable. To utter these words takes barely a minute. To write them down, perhaps a little longer, but to think them through takes decades of learning and scholarship and a degree of objectivity that demands detachment. And you know you have failed when it all comes to naught. Section 125, the court concluded, is truly secular in character, whether the spouses are Hindus or Muslims, Christians or Parsis, pagans or heathens, is wholly irrelevant in the application of these provisions. It would make no difference as to what religion is professed by the neglected wife, child, or parent. That was the one blunder our Supreme Court committed. Who or what is secular is not to be decided by learned man and woman of the highest court in the land. It is instead the sole prerogative of the politicians. Only they have the sacrosanct right to deliver this verdict. Exactly a year later, delivered they did. The Rajiv Gandhi led Congress government beset with issues of corruption, nepotism, and mismanagement, chose the well-traveled mute to political expediency and passed the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Divorce Act 1986. In one fell swoop, the Supreme Court judgment was overturned. The wording of the 1986 Act conveys to the citizens something the politician thought had been overlooked, perhaps disregarded. Who rules whom? Every application by a divorced woman under Section 125 pending before a magistrate shall be disposed of by such magistrate in accordance with the provisions of this Act. Henceforth, the husband was to pay the ex-wife maintenance only during the Idat period. The liability beyond the Idat rested not on the husband but on those relatives who would receive the ex-wife's property upon her death, failing which the Waqf board was to take responsibility. Havana was on the streets again, and India was back to being secular. Now we will move on to the next chapter, that is judiciary that almost exclusively tries to reform Hinduism. But before that, let me remind you once again to buy this wonderful book. So you can get it from Padega India or Amazon as you like. This book is available in English, Kannada, Hindi. You can purchase it in any language you like, or you can read. So definitely purchase this book. Every single penny earned from this right of this book goes to temples and foundations supporting Hindus and their causes. So please do buy this book. Okay, now we'll again read the next chapter, that is chapter number 6. So, chapter number 6, that is judiciary that almost exclusively tries to reform Hinduism. On 1 July 2022, the Supreme Court refused to entertain a plea to club multiple FIRs against Nupur Sharma for merely quoting what is derived from the revered Islamic scriptures Sahih al-Bukhari 5134, Book 67, Hadith 70, and Sunan an-Nasai 3378, Volume 4, Book 26, Hadith 3380. The court could have left it at that and dismissed the case, and the judges broke in for lunch. They did not. It is not for me to judge the judges, but let me quote them and then leave it for you to decide whether their remarks against a helpless, victimized, shunned, discarded, hunted young Hindu woman were not bolstered by decades of institutional vilification, ridicule, and discrimination against Hindus. Things do not happen in isolation. They build upon existing edifices brick by brick. You have ignited the whole country, and you have the cheek and courage to come to the court to ask for discretionary relief. Cried the judges. You are single-handedly responsible for the burnings in the country. Your statement is responsible for the unfortunate killing in Udaipur, where a Hindu tailor was beheaded on camera for supporting Nupur Sharma. Are you facing a security threat, or have you become a threat to the security of the nation? You possess a loose tongue and keep on making irresponsible statements. You should apologize to the whole country for your remarks made either for cheap publicity, political agenda, or some nefarious activities. Your petition shows your obstinate character and your arrogance that you think that the magistrate courts are too small for you. Sometimes power goes to your head and people think they have a backup and they can make any kind of statement and go scot free. You went on a channel and made irresponsible statements without even an inkling of the ramifications and serious consequences, that how seriously it will disturb the fabric of the society. That the legislature discriminates against Hindus is not news. I have provided enough examples. Plenty more exist of minority appeasement at the cost of the majority. But what is to be done when the judiciary singles out the Hindus? What is the recourse then? What is the recourse when you find that the fine lady who stands atop our temples of justice belligerent? When you find her sword that is pointing to the skies blunted and her blindfolded, perforated? When you find her skills rusted, what is the recourse? There is none. Because while the Supreme Court decides to remove discrimination from Islam, it is stopped from doing so by the Parliament. When it decides to remove perceived discrimination from Hinduism, it is encouraged to do so by the parliament. I talk here of the infamous 2018 Sabrimala verdict of the Supreme Court that went against the temple and its centuries-old tradition dictated to its keepers by the celibate deity himself. Recall the iconic statement of the dissenting judge in the original Sabrimala judgment. No sense of rationality cannot be invoked in matters of religion. Truer words were never spoken. Is it up to the Supreme Court to counsel and inform billions of believers that the holy Ganges could not have emanated from the process of Lord Shiva, or that Prophet Muhammad could not have traveled to heaven on a winged horse, or that Jesus Christ could not have walked on water or turned water to wine? Yes, the courts do have a role to play in intervening and preventing oppressive and hurtful religious practices. But then again, what is hurtful to you or me may not be hurtful to the believer. For example, I believe that stipulating a dress code is oppressive, but can the Supreme Court ban it? If it does, it would be violating the direct commandments of Allah as revealed in the Holy Quran 24:31, 33:59, 7:26. Would that be acceptable to Muslims as well as to all those liberals and feminists who cheered the Sabrimala verdict that vetoed the discrimination? Was it discrimination or perceived discrimination to begin with? After all, there are many Hindu temples where men are barred entry, such as the Kamakhya temple, Brahmaji temple, Kumari Amma temple, Tukul Bhagavati temple, and Mata temple. And there are many Hindu temples, including many Lord Ayappa temples, where menstruating women are allowed entry. It is only in this particular Lord Ayappa shrine that, because of the vow of the deity to remain celibate, menstruating women in a particular age bracket are not allowed to enter. As for menstruating women, it is expressly forbidden for them to touch the Quran, recite a complete verse, enter a mosque, do salat, perform tawaf, fast, or have sex. 56, 79, 2, 2, 2, Trimidhi 315, and Hadithi Sarif. So, are we now going to redact these verses? This exists a fundamental contradiction between Articles 21, right to life, dignity, and liberty, and 25, right to practice any religion of our constitution. If one follows or respects one, it is impossible to follow or respect the other. This is because there are tens of thousands of religious commandments, directives, decrees that directly contradict Article 21. If you are a true Catholic woman, you cannot be ordained as a priest. If you are a true Muslim woman, you cannot sing, dance, play sports, drink, fornicate, be a homosexual, wear what you want, or be an apostate. A progressive secular state that correctly removes discriminatory practices from the Hindu religion but cowers behind a lamppost like a wet cat when it comes to removing discriminatory practices from other religions is not a progressive secular state. It is a scared state. The truth is that one would have to be an atheist to always override Article 25 and support Article 21. I, being a Darwinian atheist, I am fine with this. But are you? Are the judges? Are the politicians? Are millions of my countrymen and women? That is the question. Until the time you answer it, why reform and tinker, restructure, and amend only? Hinduism, while leaving other religions alone, why bring in legislations and laws and judgments exclusively for Hindus and Hinduism? In 2019, the Tripura High Court banned animal sacrifice, even though Hindus argued that this practice was a centuries-old tantric tradition of worshipping the 10 Mahavidyas, namely Kali, Tara, Tripura Sundari, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamasta, Dhumavati, Baglamukhi, Matangi, and Kamala. What the Hindus pleaded was also in keeping with the reforms 1954 Sirur Mutt judgment that established the sanctity of an essential religious practice, but the judges would hear none of it. No person, including the state, shall be allowed to sacrifice any animal or bird within the precincts of any temple within the state of Tripura. They wrote. In 2014, the judges of Himachal Pradesh High Court had similarly banned the 600-year-old tradition of animal sacrifice during Kullu Dasera. In 2017, the quasi-judicial NGT ordered a ban on the tolling of bells and chanting of slokas by devotees at Amarnath. Praise the Lord! They simultaneously did not allow the delivery of azan through a loudspeaker there, or perhaps they indeed did, but the vagaries of the state have meant the order is yet to reach Bholenath's abode. The question to be asked is why should only the why should only the religious Hindu be prevented from conducting animal sacrifice? If the state is against animal sacrifice and laudably so, then should not it be against all animal sacrifices conducted in the name of religion? But is that the case? If the honorable courts object to the taking of the life of an animal through a religious ritual, do they have the guts to ban halal? Even every single day, more than a billion Muslims eat meat after this religious ritual has been performed. In fact, it is an essential requirement. The dhaviha or the prescribed ritual slaughter must be stacked. The incision must be precise and deep that cuts the carotid artery and the trachea. The blood must be drained completely. The blood must be drained completely. This while the animal is still alive. The head of the animal must be aligned to the Kaaba, and it is essential that Bismillah Rahim be uttered. Furthermore, only a Muslim can perform the slaughter, so according to the honorable judges, this is not a ritual. In fact, this ritualistic practice has been deemed so cruel in many European countries that it is mandatory to stun the animal before performing halal. But do our judges have the courage to shun selectivity when it comes to animal rights? Hindu festivals and celebrations and sporting events are used target, be it Jallikattu or Kambala or Naga Panchami or even kite flying during Makar Sankranti or believe it or not, restricting the height of the Dahi Handi during the Janmashtami festival. The judges have capped the human pyramid height to 20 feet. Saying anything above would inflict harm to the participating humans. We only know of Krishna stealing butter. Did he also indulge in acrobatics while stealing it? Mocked the judges. I want to ask the judges what happens to all their mockery and colorful retorts when it comes to Muharram, where tens of thousands of Muslims openly inflict serious bodily harm to themselves and to others, with whips laced with steel claws that stab deep into the devotee's face and amid chants of Ya Abbas, Ya Abbas. Is that not inflicting harm? But does our state or its arms have the guts to ban this ritual during Muharram? It is the same with banning crackers during Diwali, but allowing millions of tons of stubble to be burnt during the same month, or millions of trees to be cut during Christmas, or allowing fireworks during New Year celebrations. Because apparently only Diwali is increasing the carbon footprint and contributing to pollution. The rest are purifying the environment. And for those who blame Diwali for the state of Delhi every year, here is some perspective. An area of 17,900 square kilometer or 12 times the size of Delhi is on fire continuously for weeks on end right next to Delhi. 35 million tons of stubble are burnt right under the noses of our judges. Honestly, I am now convinced the only way stubble burning can be banned is if we call it Parali Dahan, a Hindu festival wherein, according to the Atharva Veda, Lord Vishnu burnt demon king Paralisuра when he enslaved Maruts and stormed King Rudra. Only then will it be banned. Stubble burning releases 149 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is 55% of all Indian transport carbon dioxide emission. The financial burden of treating the resulting respiratory diseases alone is 154 times more than the cost of the machines needed for stubble extraction. But if our politicians and judges thought like this, we would be a developed nation. And with our courts acting the way they are towards Hindus and their rituals, can the state be far behind? Dharmapuram Adhinam's Pattina Pravesham, the ancient Hindu ritual of carrying the priest, has now been banned, and that too by invoking clauses of forced labor. You mean to tell me the devotees are being forced to carry the pontiff the river? What next? I will tell you what next. There will soon come a time when the state will ban the pulling of the Lord Jagannath on the pretext of forced labor. But there will never come a time when the state bans sedia gestatoria, the tradition of carrying a Christian priest. There will never come a time when the state bans the hoisting of the bulky tazia on dozens of tired, exhausted soldiers during. Mm, oh, okay, here it is written Ido Haram. Okay, I do not know about it anything, so let's just skip it. There will never come a time when the state bans the tradition of carrying a heavy wooden cross on Easter parade. There will never come a time when the state bans male genital circumcision, a religion ordained act of cruelty that is banned in many European countries. Okay, that was Mohra. This selectivism against this selectivism against only Hindu festivals and religious practices will soon result in a scenario where the Hindus begin to dislike their own traditions. From there, the road to self-loathing is but a few yards away, and we know where that road leads to: forsaking Hinduism itself and accepting another religion. As if on cue, the courts have recently opined that non-Hindus cannot be barred any by temples into setting up their shops on temple premises. We cannot allow this, thundered the bench. So let me get this straight. A man whose religion orders him to viscerally hate the Hindu commands him to convert this infidel, and if he cannot, then kill him at an opportune moment. A man whose religion tells him no one has the right to be worshipped but Allah. 4062. Those who deny the Quran, their necks will be shackled. 4070. That polytheists or Hindus are the worst of creatures. 98.6. That fight against those who do not believe in Allah and who do not adopt Islam, fight them until they give the jizya while they are humbled. 929. That do not marry polytheist women unless they believe in Islam. 221. That those who disbelieve in our verses, we will drive them into a fire. 456. That do not take disbelievers as friends unless they convert and kill them if they refuse. 489. The court orders the Hindu temple to give this man the temple's own land to set up a shop in. Is there any finer example of how entrenched snubbing of Hindu interests has become? There is no other way of saying this. The camel has begun to sneak into the tent. Sneak into the tent. Open sky awaits. Okay, so the next chapter is the second last chapter, celebrating those who killed and converted millions of Hindus. But before we begin, let me just remind you once again to please buy this book, Hindus in Hindu Rashtra by Dr. Anand Ranganathan. You can buy it from Padega India or even Amazon, from wherever you like. This book is available in English, Kannada, Hindi, so you can purchase it in any language. Please do buy this book because every penny earned from this book, the royalty goes to temples and foundations supporting the cause of Hindus and their causes. So definitely buy this book. Now we will continue reading again. Let me just share the screen. Celebrating those who killed and converted millions of Hindus. To visit Nalanda, the ancient place of learning and arguably India's greatest cultural heritage, one needs to board a train from Delhi and get down 50 miles from Patna at a place called Bakhtiarpur. From Bakhtiarpur, it is a brief and pleasant journey to Nalanda. And when you reach this hallowed place, when you stroll about its manicured lawns uh, and thin brick uh, facades, facades, well, I think I pronounced it wrong anyway, and ruins, you will get to know how this magnificent temple of knowledge and wisdom was shared to the ground by barbarian. How thousands of scholars perished in the fires that burned for months. How millions of books were reduced cinders. How a civilization that envied and admired was as a Vishnu was lost forever. And that the Bible executed this vicious act, none other than Bhakti. Yes, Bhakti. And we have named not only a city in his honor. Our destruction that even Bhaktiar could not manage in his lifetime is now complete. 1,000 years later, that we have honored this barbarian is not hurtful enough. What hurts most is that because we are so unsatisfied and unsatiated with this hideous self-flagellation, we have endeavored to descend a step further into the dungeons of distorted history and peddled the narrative that Bakhtiyar did not even destroy or set fire to Nalanda. Instead, we have blamed a couple of Hindu beggars for burning down the great city of Nalanda. That's right, not an invader and his army of tens of thousands, but rather two cocky, I think it will be brittle, two cocky, brittle Hindu beggars were responsible for destroying the greatest ancient university there ever was. I do not have the inclination to narrative in detail the figments of leftist historian D.N. Jha's mind and its imaginings. The fact, the fact that he never quoted a primary source for his assertion, the fact that the first English translation of Jha's source, Pug Sam Zon Zang, was carried out as late as 100 years ago, the fact that it never even mentions the two Hindu beggars, but the fact remains that Jha has won this war of narratives. Bakhtiyar lives. For the sake of Islam, I became a wanderer. I battled infidels and the Hindus, was determined to become a martyr. Thanks be to Allah, I became a Ghazi. This is a direct quote of Babar from Babarnama. There is a Babar Road in central Delhi. Barely a mile from the Prime Minister's residence, Babar lives. Hindu gods and their idols are as dirty as they're ugly and horrible to look at. And witnessing the destruction of temple idols gives me so much joy. The man who said this was also the chief proponent of the Goa Inquisition that led to the conversion, torture, and murder of thousands of Hindus. His name was Saint Francis Xavier. Every year, millions of Indians, including our Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi, venerate him. Saint Francis Xavier lives. Sikandar Samiri, 1389 to 1313, who commissioned Jamia Masjid and is still eulogized in Kashmir, collected 3 khirwars or 210 kilograms of sacred thread from Kashmiri Hindus before he burnt them. A single sacred thread weighs 7 grams. I shall leave it to the mathematicians among you to calculate the sheer scale of the genocide Sikandar Samiri lives. I will raise these Anasagar Hindu temples to the ground. I have come to India to fight the holy war against the infidels. The man who said this was Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, I think. Yes. The Hanafi Sufi saint who fought alongside the demonic Muhammad Ghori and unsparingly converted Hindus. Every year, millions of Indians, including our Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi, offer a chadar at his mazar and venerate him. Moinuddin Chishti or Moinuddin Chisti lives. We know more about the Mughals than about Shivaji, as properly known as Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, pun intended anyway. Rana Pratap and Prithviraj Chauhan. Why? Because history that is written by the victors is peddled by the vanquished, and we have been vanquished. This is a country where people still go and pray at the grave of Aurangzeb, who beheaded Guru Tegh Bahadur, and decapitated Sambhaji Maharaj, demolished Kashi Vishwanath, and murdered 4.6 million Hindus. This is the country where Guru Arjan Dev was forced to sit on a hot plate and literally cooked alive by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. And what do? We immortalize Jahangir in our films. We immortalize Jahangir in our films as the affable, feather-toying, romantic Salim. This is a country where a celebrated historian Ram Chandra Guha did not want Delhi roads to be named after Chhatrapati Shivaji, the man who birthed an empire stretching from Peshawar to Palasi. Because in Guha's words, he was a little known regional figure and a feudal lord who endorsed past hierarchies. This is a country where we eulogize the invaders who, over many centuries, perpetrated the largest genocide in human history and murdered 80 million of us. The figure arrived at authoritatively historians K.S. Lal and Will Durant. This a country where Kareena Kapoor and Saif Ali Khan take pride in naming their son Taimur, where Akhilesh Yadav takes pride in having the nickname Tipu. Our historian has been written by those who hated Hindus, Hinduism, and Hindustan. Our history is being written by those who hated Hindus, Hinduism, and Hindustan, There are hundreds of examples, but just one would suffice. Tipu Sultan. Read his manifesto. Read his manifesto, written in his own words. It is a terrifying proclamation calling for Muslims to come together to wage jihad. Annihilation of the infidels is a sacred duty, he writes. The Hindus of Kurg suffered a particularly brutal onslaught. Murders, tortures, forced conversions, even dead Hindus were converted, even dead Hindus. Tipu destroyed more than 800 temples, 27 churches, captured 60,000 Christians, converted 30,000, and killed thousands. Chroniclers Lewis Rice and R.D. Paloskar believed the figure could be as high as 8,000 temples. Descendants of Mandyam Iyengars do not celebrate Diwali till this day. Ever wondered why? Tipu butchered them on this day. Read Bartholomew's personal account of Tipu Sultan's butchery in Calicut. Men, women, and children were paraded naked and trampled by elephant, and yet we call Tipu a symbol of communal harmony. We cheer when the statue of the evil racist king Leopold is demolished in Belgium, but we celebrate Tipu Jayanti. Because tyrants who murder Hindus are not tyrants, but heroes. Praising Tipu is like praising King Leopold for building roads and sports in Congo, balancing out ivory and rubber trade and a million murders. There is no difference between Tipu Sultan apologists and Holocaust deniers, and yet they exist in their millions. In years to come, I'm sure Jacob Memon's grave would become as popular a worshipping place as Aurangzeb is today. Visited and prayed at by politicians and film stars. The same Aurangzeb who was in Baghdadi 350 years before ISIS. The genocide he perpetrated claimed 4.6 million Hindu lives. If an incident could muster a million spine-chilling imaginings, it would be that of the one in 1675 under broad daylight Chandni Chowk, where Guru Tegh Baha was beheaded on the orders of Aurangzeb. And yet we have cities and roads named after him. We have his tomb consecrated and turned into a memorial. 75 years have gone, but we still have not got independence from brainwashing and servitude. And that is why in years to come, Yaqub Memon would be celebrated just like Aurangzeb is. After all, tens of thousands attended his funeral, tears flowing down their cheeks. People will come and pray at his grave, seek his blessings. From the Aryans to Aurangzeb, from Saint Xavier to Shivaji, our historians have chosen what to hide, what to invent, and what to disclose. The singular reason for this is the craving for patronage of an ideology, a government, an ecosystem, or a clique. Villains are made into heroes and heroes into villains. We like it this way. Our historical figures are to be worshipped. They are to be made into gods, into atlases who carry the weight of our ideologies and our biases on the nape of their necks. History as myth, myth as history. It conforms to what we really are, unsure of our present and fearful of our future. Fear and trembling, that is what this is. And the whole nation chugs along. A whole nation chugs along on this dead simmering coal. A journey to nowhere, slow, halting, and tiring. Until you realize what the grand plan always is to appropriate invaders and to forget our own. How else do we explain appropriating foreign destructive ideologies and their proponents like Karl Marx, Mao, Che? Can we now appreciate how reading and imbibing a particular history can weaken a nation? Because when you eulogize monsters like Che, Mao, and Pol Pot, you also decide to work on their paths. You weaken the nation. Look at what the communists did to Bengal. Look at what they did to anything they have touched. And they still venerate Stalin and Mao. Mao, who killed 63 million of his own people. And if you think I'm talking abstract and philosophical gibberish, recall who wanted to scuttle the Indo US nuclear deal, who was against the Green Revolution, against river linking, against dams. Recall who forbade the setting up of blood donation camps during the 1962 war with China. Recall who hailed the Tiananmen Square massacre. recall who was against liberalization. They are still very much among us in our society, in our committees, in our universities, in our parliament. The more we are ignorant of our history, the more we are taught it wrongly, the more we clear the path for them to return to power. History for us is either to be hidden or invented. We tell and retell what we like of it, and of what we do not, and what we do not. We scrunch it up and slip it under the mattress. For the victors, a quill to write history with. For the vanquished, the burden to peddle it. But we forget, history is not homeopathy. It does not work as a placebo when diluted. It simply disappears. Every city a Hindu lives in, every school he attends, every university he goes to, every road he walks on, he cannot escape being confronted by his cruel past that raped, mutilated, murdered, and converted him. He cannot escape being humiliated by it, pummeled again by it. By the force of history, condensed and packed into a punch that lands and lands and keeps on landing until the Hindu is lying face down on canvas, blood-laced spit from his lips. This is the Hindu Rashtra, they say. I ask them, is there a Hitler Road in Tel Aviv? Okay, so now we'll move on to the last chapter, that is Places of Worship Act 1991. But before that, let me remind you once again that please buy this book. Okay, wait. Yes, now I think you can see the screen. Yes, now. So please buy this book. This book is available in English, Kannada, Hindi, Hindus and Hindu Rashtra by Dr. Anand Ranganathan. You can purchase it from Padega India or Amazon, wherever you like. So, if the every penny earned from this book, the royalty goes to temples and foundations supporting Hindus and their causes. So please do buy this book. Now we'll should continue reading. Let me share the screen again. Places of Worship Act 1991. History that is written by the victors, I had remarked earlier, is peddled by the vanquished. And as far as I am concerned, one of the most barbaric legislations ever peddled in India is the 1991 Places of Worship Act. But in 2019, the virtue signaling Supreme Court, in its other judgment, willfully ratified this act that obligates maintaining all religious places except Ram Janmabhoomi, as they were on 15 August 1947, a 75-year-old date in an 8,000-year-old civilization. Historical injustice, historical injustice of Kasi or Mathura can now never be addressed unless the parliament overrides not only this barbaric act but also the Supreme Court's perfidious ratification of it. A legal recourse to correct historical injustices cannot be denied in a democracy, and this is not a Hindu issue. I, as a Darwinian atheist, demand the abrogation of the Places of Worship Act. If a mosque had been demolished by a Hindu king and a temple built on it, I, a kafir, and an atheist for whom Islam sanctions death penalty, would have fought for the right of Muslims to legally get back their mosque. History is but a collection of images, pregnant, expecting, screaming, and if an image could deliver a million words, it would be that of the Nandi waiting patiently for 400 years for his Lord to emerge. Will he have to wait for another 400 years? Nations weaken not because of their past, but rather by how they are taught it. For 70 years, we have been taught to celebrate the Mathura Idgah and the Gyanvapi Mosque as monuments to Hindu Muslim unity and not as what they really are, cruel historical injustices. Because for 70 years we have been taught to forget cruel historical injustices from Somnath to Kasi Vishwanath, Babarpur to Bakhtiarpur, from Allahabad to Aurangabad. These injustices have deliberately been made visible as though to lionize the debasement, celebrate the humiliation. And the irony is that the same people who have taught us this, drilled this self loathing in us, these same people want others to fight historical injustices around the world. They condemn barbarians of West hitherto worshipped like the Confederacy generals Rhodes, Churchill, Pizarro, Murray, Holston, Leopold. They celebrate their roads and buildings being renamed, their statues being brought down illegally. But here in India, this same state eulogizes barbarians like Tipu, Aurangzeb, Babur, Khilji. They celebrate the destruction of Kasi, Mathura, Ayodhya, Martan. It is a heady mix of hatred for Hinduism and love for jihadism. Hatred for India and love for its breakup. To show you the extent of the conflict, here is a passage from the 2019 Ayodhya judgment where, wait a minute. Okay. To show you the extent of conflict, here is a passage from the 2019 Ayodhya judgment where the honorable judges exalt and willfully ratify this act. To recreate the imagery of words, those who sat that sultry day in the court and heard those words uttered by the highest court in the land, I will provide after every sentence phonetic equivalents of whips, lashing one's back in a self-flagellating orgy of destruction and humiliation. The Places of Worship Act imposes a bar on the institution of fresh suits or legal proceedings, with the only exception other than Babri Masjid, Ram Janmabhoomi case being appeals or proceedings pending at the commencement of the law on the ground that conversion of a place of worship had taken place after 15 August 1947, whose fact the Places of Worship Act is thus a legislative intervention which preserves non-retrogression as an essential feature of our secular values, being as it is intrinsically related to the obligations of a secular state. Wallach smack. It reflects the commitment of India to the equality of all religions. Whose thumb. Above all, the Places of Worship Act is an affirmation of the solemn duty which was cast upon the state to preserve and protect the equality of all faiths as an essential constitutional value, a norm which has the status of being a basic feature of the Constitution. Whack, slap. The, okay, this is the purpose underlying the enactment of Places of Worship Act, and which is that the speaks, which is that speaks to our, which is that it speaks to our history and to the future of the nation. No, this law airbrushes our history and destroys our future. Where oil the cat o' nine tails of your whip, run them lovingly through the hollow of your palm. Prepare your prepare your sink back for another assault. But the Supreme Court was not done yet. It then gloats and goes on to underline what the Home Minister said while tabling this barbaric act. The purpose of enacting the law was explained by the Indian Minister of Home Affairs on the floor of the Lok Sabha on 10 September 1991. We see this bill as a measure to provide and develop our glorious traditions of love, peace, and harmony. These traditions are part of a cultural heritage of which every Indian is justifiably proud. Tolerance for all faiths has characterized our great civilization since time immemorial. Never forget that these politicians and these judges enacted this draconian act to preserve the characteristics of our civilization since time civilization. They spoke and acted as though they know. They spoke and acted as they, though they, not us, understand what a civilization is, and because they are the keepers of its characteristics, they must act for us, no matter how unjust or undemocratic the consequences of their actions might be. So I ask, what is civilization? How do you define it is? How do you define it? Is it an idea to be thrust upon the subject so they carry it forward? Is it the placement of forks on the left and spoons on the right? Or resplendent crockery? Is it sartorial splendor? Is it words uttered or retained? Is it science? Is it ease of living? Is it consumption? Is it money? Many of the worst tyrants who killed millions, wiped off entire races, even continents, have been poets, artists, proponents of science. But do they call their endowments as promoting or harboring a civilization? To me, the mark of civilization is this unquenchable thirst of man to demand justice for his ancestors, to correct a historical wrong, or that exemplifies a continuity, an idea, a memory that can never be erased, that worth fighting for and preserving. It makes justice greater than the sum of its parts, and that is why civilizations are not fleeting like empires. To demand justice for people who were dead for hundreds of years, it is almost as though you can feel their pain, their suffering, their destruction that has transcended the limits of body and time. And that is why history is a medicine, why Catholicism is a cure. And when I see the Ram Janmabhoomi being proclaimed, I see it as a catharsis. I see it as a catharsis, as a deliverance of justice to my ancestors who were wronged. I do not know what shape the temple would take. I do not know when it would ultimately come up. In a way, being an atheist, these issues are not of importance to me, but I know for a fact that the deliverance has come. It is confounding to me because I am but a bunch of cells here today, gone tomorrow. But till the time I am alive, this concept of striving to correct historical justice is vital. It defines who I am, what civilization I am part of. That erasing my genes cannot erase any civilization, or cannot erase my civilization. The concept of justice is like memory. It keeps getting passed on until realized. And to those who now call this nation a Hindu Rashtra run by religious zealots and fascists, to those I ask, in which theocratic state would religious zealots wait for a half a millennium and even then 1 billion people strong? Leave it to 5 people to decide the fate of the demand. Their yearning, the consecration of their soul itself. This is what makes me proud that India, through the delivery and acceptance of the Ayodhya judgment, has written her history with the grammar of justice, not anarchy. This movement throws up a milieu of connected philosophical conundrums, one of them being, should a judge be the product of the society or should a society be the product of the judge? As I said, 5 judges took the call. The alternative was for 1 billion Hindus to take it. Academy prevailed over anarchy, and I'm proud that it did. On the Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi issue, one must read the Supreme Court and the Allahabad High Court judgments to really understand why quack leftist historians spread so many lies that the courts had to step in to blast them for their perfidy and mediocrity. They said the $0 excavated temple pillars were placed there. They said the Vishnu Hari inscription was stolen from the Lucknow Museum and brought there. They said there was a Buddhist shrine there, there was a Jain shrine there was a mosque there, that there was no Hindu temple underneath the dome. Ultimately, all their lies came to nothing as the judges rejected all their claims and accepted that there indeed was a Hindu temple underneath the dome, and that the dome did not have its foundations but was raised on existing walls. This is what the court said about one Professor Suvira Jaiswal. She claims that the disputed building she claims that the disputed building was constructed in the 16th century by Babur at Ayodhya, called Babri Mosque. And the statement she is making as a historian, but simultaneously on page 105, she said that she has not read anything about Babri Mosque and did not study thoroughly, and therefore cannot say as to when Babri Mosque came into existence. Historian after quack historian was exposed. Here is R.C. Thakran. In newspapers, I have read Babur had built a mosque in Ayodhya. As a historian, I consider newspapers to be a source of knowledge. I myself never did any excavation in any field. Here is the quote on the expert professor, Sushil Srivastava. Though the witness has been produced as an expert historian, but on page 222, he admits that he had very little knowledge of history. There is no other way of putting it. The only bulwarks for justice are science and evidence. I take you back to the story of the Turin shroud that for 2000 years was believed to have been used for wrapping the body of Jesus Christ after crucifixion, until in 1989 when scientists proved through carbon dating that it was only 600 years old. Science teaches us not to fear our past. Law teaches us those nations that fear their past, fear their future. The Places of Worship Act teaches us not only to fear our past, but also to fear our future. That's why I say, in the matter of Ayodhya or Kasi or Mathura, the Hindus must be thanked for pleading before the court to seek justice. If the holy shrine of some other religion was demolished and people of other faith washed their dirty feet all around the sacred relic, this country would have witnessed a civil war. These atheists owes a debt of gratitude to a billion Hindus who are writing their history with the grammar of justice, not anarchy. Especially because it is beyond any doubt that Aurangzeb ordered the demolition of the Kasi Biswanath temple and ordered that the Gyanvapi mosque be built over it. Only those who have read their history from Watson University believe otherwise. It is written in most authentic biography of Aurangzeb, Masir Alamgiri, that in 1669, on orders of Aurangzeb, the Kasi Vishwanath temple was demolished. And then 1 year later, he ordered the demolition of the temple at Mathura and had the idols brought to Agra to be scattered under the steps of the Begum Sahib Mosque, so that they would be trodden on. The Farman is also archived in Bikaner archives. And here is Sir Jagannath Sarkar's translation of Masir Alamgiri Aurangzeb, eager to establish Islam, issued orders to the governors of all provinces to demolish the schools and temples of the infidels, and with the utmost urgency put down the teachings and the public practice of the religion of these misbelievers. And yet there are those who deny the Hindus their legitimate right to correct historical injustice. And principal among them are our legislature and the judiciary through their 1991 Places of Worship Act. And that is also why I profoundly disagree with the RSS chief Dr. Mohan Bhagwat when he says, "Why look for sibling in every mosque?" I find his statement flippant, frivolous, and an insult to all those who seek to legally correct historical injustices. You may say that as a Darwinian atheist, I have no legitimate right to intervene, but I assert that this is not a Hindu issue or a religious issue. Looking for a sibling, one sibling, or 10,000, reclaiming demolished, destroyed places of worship, correcting historical injustices is an Indian issue. It is a civilization issue. The history of Sri Sitaram Goel meticulously tabulated 1862 mosques that are built upon demolished temples. According to J. Sai Deepak and Bikram Sampath, this number is high as 40,000, and that is why we need to look for each and every sibling. Wherever it is, hidden or exposed, underground or over it, we owe it to our ancestors. We owe it to justice itself. Because, as I said, the concept of justice is like memory. It keeps getting passed on until realized. Why shouldn't Nandi be washed of the sins the tyrants committed on him and his lords above? His legs buckled, his eyes wet, carved in stone, but not to be said. He sat outside with pucked up ears, waiting patiently for 400 years. He saw the monster and his orders, charged his lord with rusted swords. He saw them worse, he saw them spit in those waters of the pit. He heard their cries, he heard their call, he lived through it, he saw it all. But not a whisper, not a groan. Life in you was but on loan. And then, after centuries of pain, when his moment of joy came, he saw them claim it was just a fountain. So we have completed the book. So this is epilogue. So they read it. Okay, I think we should read it. Epilogue. These then are the 8 reasons why Hindus in this so-called Hindu Rashtra are not just second class but rather 8 class citizens. I dare say most Hindus are not even aware of this legislative, judicial, and constitutional apartheid. I confess I myself was not until a few months ago, because over these past 9 years, not a day has gone by when the left that holds a narrative, monopoly on the media narrative in India, principally through academic inbreeding and entrenched entitlement and a collectivized belief that come what may, the system will protect them. Not a day has gone by when the left has not indulged in one-tone propaganda, selectivism, scaremongering, Hinduphobia, shameless hypocrisy, and the institutionalization of false equivalence. From spreading misinformation and fake news to pillorying institutions like the Election Commission of India, Election Commission, and the armed forces, nothing was left to chance. The intellectuals have turned into pretenders, and the pretenders have turned into porters. They have made sure the soft clay that gets baked ultimately into wisdom and sagacity is now the clay of unknown misery and mediocrity. But it was not always like that. No, it was not. The clay is special. It is the same clay that suckled the glorious weather that fed us, whose richness reflected silently the greatness of its people, whose texture echoed in unity in diversity, whose fragrance recalled Bankim and Bharati and Vivekananda and Ambedkar and C.V. Raman, whose blood birthed Shivaji and Subhash Chandra Bose and the great revolutionaries. It is the same clay, it is that same clay that trundles down our mountains and is washed over by the sin obliterating waters of our holy rivers. And while the wait to receive that same clay, receive it in their trembling hands at Ganga Sagar before it is lost forever in the vast oceans of apathy, while the wait, we have work to do to make sure they receive this clay and then shape it into a new India, a great India where a billion Hindus would simply be allowed to live and exist without being discriminated against. They do not ask for much, they never have, and as to the question whether they never will, I leave that on them. As the great Navajo saying goes, you cannot wake a person pretending to be asleep. The book is complete. This was an afterword by Vikram Sabatji. Let's read it. By the time one finishes this meticulously referenced and eloquently well written book, one is filled with a deep sense of horror, rage, and pathos horror, and rage for living as blissfully unaware Hindus in a wonderland, unilaterally bearing the cross of secularism on our shoulders and at our peril, and pathos as no succor seems to be in sight even from supposed pro-Hindu dispensations. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, amongst the numerous hats that he effortlessly wears, is a prolific writer and a and a conscientious thinker who never shies away from calling a spade a bloody shovel. Hindus in Hindu Rashtra is a distillation of everything that he has been articulating so courageously from numerous platforms since the last several years, based on an extensive research of various sources on the multiple themes that he addresses in this book. Dr. Ranganathan has painted for us a gloomy picture of the present and the future of Hindus in the only country in the world where they have numerical strength of some consequence. From the Gandhian and Nehruvian era, nullified fantasies to the current one of intense polarization and vote bank politics, the interests of the Hindu have always been relegated to the last priority. She is perennially called upon to eschew her identity and consciousness in the larger interests of secularism, even as every other community has the freedom to flaunt it and even exploit it for political community and electoral benefits. This book elucidates with detailed facts and documentation about how the Hindu community's rights have been trampled upon in various realms. The freedom to control or reclaim its places of worship, rejuvenate its education centers, to look at its own past and its heroes and villains in blatantly unfair legislations, in judicial remedies, in the protection of its life, property, and liberty, in short, its very existence. In his characteristic, blunt, unswavering, and hard-hitting style, Dr. Ranganathan has rightly built a case for what he terms as fate-enabled appetite in a country that is ironically being pilloried worldwide as being on the cusp of a violent, morbid Hindu Rashtra, gobbling up all its minorities in a calculated genocide. This work illustrates authoritatively that the boot is actually on the other foot. If even after reading a scholarly and evocative work like this, a small masterpiece in its own right, the Hindus and the government of this country do not wake up to control and address these issues, the fate of the community will sadly be akin to that of lambs being quietly laid to their own slaughter. Dr. Vikram Sampath, historian, fellow of the Royal Historical Society. Now we have some notes and references. I mean, please purchase the book and explore them. Uh, this is like damn good book. I mean, how? I mean, um, this is like so much praiseworthy. What can I say? Even J. Sai Deepak and Dr. Sampatji, Vikram Sampatji, has given their forward and afterward. So please buy this book. Let me share the screen once again. Yes. So you can buy this book from Padega India or Amazon, wherever you like. This book is available in English, Kannada, Hindi. Definitely buy this book. uh, why to buy this book is every penny earned from the right this book goes to Hindu temples and such functions. It supports Hindu causes. Well, the screen, okay, you can see Hindu causes. So they help out Hindus only, like they even helps out Hindus who comes from Pakistan or Bangladesh to give them shelter, take the funds, education and all. Okay, let me show you how. So Anand ji has made a thread of it, playing. Yes, here you can see. So every paisa rupee gone goes to foundations and temples for Hindu support. So please definitely buy this book. Oh, oh well. I forgot to screen share again. I hope now you can see. Yes. So to conclude here on. So if you have any suggestions, what should we read next? You can drop a comment, and if you will, so we'll read books like on papers. We will also read papers. So if you have any suggestion to read any kind of papers or books, good books and papers, so you can put them in the comment, and please like and subscribe. So we'll conclude it here only. Jai Sri Ram, Vande Mataram.